Greetings, loyal subscribers and honoured guests. So I didn't have an episode last week because I didn't really have anything prepared, and my copy of Hogwarts Legacy had just arrived, and I really wanted to play that. So that's what I did. But I've got something for you this week, and it is the latest entry in the Theatrhythm series on the Switch, called Final Bar Line. Now, I am quite a fan of this series. I'll just show you quickly. The original game came out on the 3DS, and it was very good, enjoyable. I enjoyed it a lot at the time, but then a few years later along came Theatrhythm Curtain Call, which improved on the original in nearly every way. There were way more songs, and there was more of a sort of dungeon mode where it was like a mini RPG where you went through a series of battles and stages and things. And then after that there was a Dragon Quest version announced, and I was really excited, but it never came out in the West. But that hasn't stopped me really. I got hold of another 2DS XL and modded it, and then I imported Theatrhythm Dragon Quest, and yes, of course it is all in Japanese, but the basic gameplay hasn't really changed too much from the previous two games, so I'm still able to play through the stages. It's just some of the modes with Japanese text I have to use Google Translate just by pointing my phone camera at the screen and translating the text. And that works fairly well, really. And then the same developers basically made a very similar game, but instead of Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, it all centred around Kingdom Hearts, and that was Melody of Memory. It's not quite the same, but the mechanics are pretty similar really to Theatrhythm, so I almost consider it a continuation of that series. And the developer Indie Zero, I was familiar with them anyway, because they worked on the Retro Game Challenge or Game Center CX game on the DS years and years ago. And that was really cool, and then they did NES Remix, that was them as well, so they've got pretty good pedigree really. And now that brings us to the new game, Final Bar Line, which is the biggest one by far. There's like almost 400 songs in the base game. They have done something a bit rotten, which is the digital deluxe version, which is almost £100. And you do get about another 200 songs, but £100 almost is a lot to ask. And if they gave us the option to buy those songs sort of digitally later on, separately, when we could afford it, I wouldn't have such a problem, because I'd probably wait for a sale or just pick them up later on. But you can only get those the digital deluxe with the base game all in one if you buy it outright. You can't get the extra songs later. There's a DLC with about 25 songs, which is about £25. But for all the extra songs, and some of them are really good. They're for games like Nier and other games like that, other Square Enix RPG series. To hold that behind such a high paywall is a bit rotten, I think. But anyway, let's move over to the game itself. So initially, I didn't think I would keep the audio in these videos at all. The music, because I was worried about getting a copyright strike, but I think I'm going to leave it in there. My channel's not monetized anyway, so I don't have to worry about them demonetizing the video. It's just if they issue a full-on copyright strike. So I'm just going to get onto the game proper, because there's a bit of tutorials to start with. So if you've played the old games, this will look kind of familiar to you. The main difference is that on the 3DS games, it was all touchscreen based, and there was only a single input at a time. So the songs never really got terribly complex. I'm going to skip on a bit further because we're still in the tutorials. So this should be a proper stage next that I'm about to show. And anyway, yeah, so now it's moved on over to buttons and sticks instead of touchscreen, and that allows multiple inputs at a time. So for example, you'll have to push both analog sticks in different directions at the same time, or hold down a couple of buttons, or on the higher level difficulty songs and the higher difficulty modes, you might have to hold down up to 4 buttons at a time. But I've started off on the lower difficulty setting, really, because I'm just still getting used to it. I haven't played a Theatrhythm game properly for a number of years now. I played Melody of Memory a little bit and Dragon Quest, but it has been a while, so I'm quite rusty, and I just wanted to get used to it again. And when you start up the game for the first time, you're given the choice of 6 titles to unlock for free with your first key. And I went for Final Fantasy XII because I think it's a very underrated Final Fantasy game in all regards, really. But in particular, the music is fantastic. So I wanted to hear it. And basically, this main mode, the series quests mode, sees you choosing a particular title, in this case 12, and then you advance through the songs from that particular game until you hit a certain point, and then you're given another key to unlock the next one. It's not all that far in. I think it's about 5 songs before you get the next key, so you don't have to completely finish one game before you move on to another. There's anywhere between about 10 and 18 songs per game, but depending on which one it is. I think there is 13 songs on this particular one, and so this is Final Fantasy 13. I think I said it was 12, but 12 is also a very good one as well. I enjoy that, but I unlock later on. But so you work your way through all of the different games, and as you complete each song and beat it for the first time, it then gets added to the sort of free mode where you can just play whatever you want. And I think there's more songs than you initially see in these series modes, because there's like symphonic versions of old chiptune music, and there's remixes and dance versions and all sorts of things buried in the game somewhere. So you don't necessarily see every song just by working through the series mode. And amongst these series, it has all the numbered games as you would expect, for all the way from 1 up to 15, and there's 10-2 in there as well, and 13-2 and 13-3, or Lightning Returns as it's called. But in addition to that, there's other stuff like Type 0 and Mystic Quest and Chocobo's Dungeon, and games like Crystal Chronicles, other Final Fantasy spin-offs, really. So it's quite extensive. It's the biggest number of songs in one of these games that there's ever been, even without the super expensive DLC. So I would say the base game is really worth the money. It's just a bit sucks a bit that they're asking for so much money for the extra songs. But anyway, that's enough about that. Let's skip on a bit further ahead. I want to show the music from another game, if possible. I think this might still be 13, but if I move over to here we are. So now I've chosen to unlock 12 after 13, because I would say, although I like the Nobuo Uematsu game music from the early games, I think I prefer the more recent stuff, to be honest, like 12, 13, 14 and 15. Never really played 11 much. I did give it a go, but I don't remember the music terribly much. So I don't know about that one. 14, the other MMO, I have played a fair amount of, and I do really like the music, but there still will be a ton of music in that game that I will never have heard before, probably, because of all the expansions. I believe they would have got new music, so there's quite a lot to discover, really. What is missing a little bit is any sort of campaign or dungeon mode. I know it's got these series quests where you work your way through an entire game, and that's kind of similar to the dungeon stuff they've done before in the previous games, but it's not entirely the same, so it's a bit more basic, really, than Curtain Call was in that regard. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's just I think the higher difficulties might be a bit too much for me with the more complex gameplay now, the multiple inputs that you have to do. I can just about cope with the second difficulty up, depending on the rating of the song, because as well as the 4 difficulties, there's also a number rating, so even on the higher numbers on the second difficulty, I still struggle at the moment. So, but after a bit of practice, maybe I'll get good enough to be able to beat some of the later songs. Let's just skip ahead a bit more and try and find one more song to show you, and then we'll call it a day for this episode. I think this is all still 12, but I did move on to 10 at some point, but I might not have included that in the videos that I recorded. No, I don't think I recorded any of my gameplay from 10, but yeah, it's as ever, it's an addictive game, and it's ideal really for short bursts of handheld play. I do think it's a shame in some ways that they couldn't find a way to still let you do touch screen input if you wanted to, with the tablet, because in handheld mode that would have been quite good fun and closer to the older games. But I'm sitting here realising I haven't really explained what all these different types of input are, because I sort of assumed that people would be familiar with the other games in the series, but of course that's not going to be true at all. So the red circles are just single button inputs, and if there's 2 in parallel like that, you press any 2 buttons together. It doesn't really matter which buttons you press, as long as you press 2 together. So you line them up with the input circle there, and then the yellow circles with an arrow in them are to show which direction you have to flick the stick as it hits the circle, and then these green lines that wave up and down mean that you have to hold a button down and move the stick up and down to match the undulations really, and you'll earn points and build up your chain for moving it in the right direction. And then there's just green lines that don't change at all, and as you see there, sometimes there's a direction right at the end of one of these wavy green lines, which means you have to end it with a stick flick. So yeah, this is like I say, one of the lighter difficulties. It's quite gentle, really. Certain games have a higher difficulty rating than others. These 12 and 13 are quite low to begin with. I think 7 is the easiest one, because I think they probably assumed that a lot of people will want to start with 7 because they've got such nostalgia for that particular soundtrack, which I can't blame them for, really. So anyway, I think I'm going to start wrapping things up there. It's a bit of a shorter episode, but it's given you the gist of what Theatrhythm is all about and what this new game is like. Hopefully Square Enix won't kick up a fit about me including the music, but we'll see. So I do have something lined up for next week, which is the video I've been talking about making for a little while actually, which is that Heaven Dust collection. I'll finally get a chance to put a couple of hours into it over the next few days, and then I'll put together an episode on that. The next super rare game has already been announced, which is Hell Pie, which I'm thinking about ordering, although the performance isn't perfect on the Switch apparently, which is a bit off-putting. But I might give it a shot anyway. It's a 3D platformer, and I do really enjoy those. So anyway, I'll see you again next week for another episode then. And in the meantime, take care.